Brand new season, brand new dawn for Box. And it's lights out and away we go.
Simply lovely.
I was really enjoying that last in.
Hey guys, we're back with a new name and a new look, but with the same content. Which, if you haven't already listened to, firstly, why? Secondly, you should definitely go and check it out right now. And then come back. But now, let's get into what happened under the lights in Marina Bay for the Singapore Grand Prix. Ultimately, probably the best Grand Prix of the season to date. And that is ultimately thanks to the Red Bull gear shifting issue, the resurgence of Ferrari, and the incredible performances of Lando in his McLaren and Lewis and George. For without them, we would not have had that four-way battle to the top spot until the very last lap. Or until George put his car in the wall. Thankfully, I was able to attend. It was a phenomenal race to be in, to be at. The atmosphere was phenomenal. And, especially for those last few laps, it was just something completely indescribable. The passion, the excitement, and the sheer joy at the possibility of there being a Ferrari win or Lando's maiden win, or just the overtakes that Mercedes needed to get for the possibility of that top spot. And then to cap it all off with the fireworks, the accidents, the safety car, the virtual safety car, it was just, it was an amazing place, an incredible place to be in. But let's get into the top stories coming out of Marina Bay as we gear up for the Japanese Grand Prix. Red Bull's absolute disaster of a weekend. What can I say? From the get-go, they were not having a great weekend. They had gear shifting issues plaguing them from the moment the car hit the track on Friday afternoon. Both Max and Sergio were complaining of issues relating to downshifts and then upshifts, and then it just never seemed, no matter what the team did, it was just never going to get resolved. And ultimately, despite the team's best efforts to find a resolution for the underlying problem and remedy it before qualifying on Saturday, both drivers were eliminated in Q2 for the first time since 2018. But then the pain didn't stop there. We've seen Max and Sergio, the king of the streets, both come back in great form, make some incredible overtakes, and come back from being in the middle of the grid. But that just didn't happen. And ultimately, Max Verstappen's 10-race winning streak came to an end. And while that is a story in unto itself, it's who eliminated him from qualifying that is truly intriguing. The Red Bull Junior and team's current reserve driver, who's filling in for an injured Danny Rick, Liam Lawson, managed to knock out both Max Verstappen, the reigning world champ, and Sergio Perez, currently sitting second in the championship, out of Q3 contention. It was a very slim margin, but he knocked them out nonetheless. And what's even more impressive is that he did it in his third Formula One weekend ever. His third race ever in Formula One. And not only he capped that off with a 9th place finish in Sunday night's race, securing his first 2 points as an F1 driver, as a rookie. And that is something that only 2 out of the 4 rookies we've seen this season have managed to do. So surely this would have to put him in contention for a full-time seat in 2024, right? I think Red Bull have other ideas, unfortunately. But I would love to see him on the grid, Christian said we'll see him on the grid at some point, but now is not the time. He doesn't have a spot at Red Bull or AlphaTauri. So I guess we'll see. Maybe he has a shot at Williams. They have a seat open, and with Logan's current form. But that's a story for another time. At this point in the racing calendar, I think it is safe to say that Oscar Piastri, the Papaya McLaren rookie, has solidified his position as rookie of the season. Race after race this season, Oscar has proven that he has what it takes to make it. At the moment, heading into Japan, and after the chaos of that Singapore Grand Prix, he has an average qualifying position of 11th, which isn't bad. And he has an average race finish of 12th, both of which, so these statistics are both significantly higher than the only other rookie to have competed in every race so far this season, Logan Sargent. I've done the math.
What?
It could be wrong. I'm trusting Excel on this one. He currently has an average qualifying and race finish of 17th. So Oscar's sitting 5 to 6 places ahead of him, which is pretty impressive considering they were teammates. They came through the ranks together. And to cap all of this off, Oscar managed a whopping 10 overtakes in Marina Bay to come home in 7th with 6 points after qualifying 17th through no fault of his own, but due to the red flag caused by Lance Stroll's disastrous, horrific crash, which ultimately saw him unable to compete in Sunday's race, and left the team with a staggering $1.2 million repair job ahead of the Japanese Grand Prix.
God, please, no!
But thankfully, he is okay, and he did get out of the car. But it gets me thinking, it's a repair job and a repair build that I gather was not a welcome thought for the team. They've seen a significant downturn in form since the Spanish Grand Prix earlier this year, only boasting, I think it was 2 podiums, and to Mercedes 4 over the same period, despite Aston Martin reporting several upgrades, which were set to increase the overall performance of the car. With only 7 races left this season and an upturn in form from Ferrari, Aston Martin have very limited time to turn things around and claw back the 3rd place in the Constructors' Championship that they have now lost to Ferrari. And this is a task made ever so difficult when you've only got one car on the track.
Bruh.
So, thankfully, Lance is back this weekend. If they can keep both cars on track in one piece, hopefully they can start their comeback this weekend. But speaking of Ferrari, start the clown music. Have they changed their tune about their non-existent yet existent number 1 driver? The evidence suggests that is well and truly the case. And it does not bode well for our Monegasque, who has devoted his entire life to driving for the Italy-based team. Team radio from Mercedes to George, early on in the Singapore Grand Prix, sums up pretty much where the team are currently at for the position of number 1 driver. Ferrari are sacrificing Leclerc. A statement which we're ultimately not used to hearing, as it's usually been the other way around. They sacrifice Sainz and boost Charles Leclerc up. And, there have been some conflicting reports, with some suggesting Charles opted to sacrifice himself and defend Carlos from lights out by choosing to go with the soft tyres. And so that way they could secure the best result possible for the team and a 1-2 finish. However, there is no doubt that over the past 2 races, there has been a significant degree of favoritism in favour of the Spaniard. But that can also arguably be warranted, given that, he has secured pole position in both of those races. And Charles has come in third. So can we really blame Ferrari and the team for backing the driver that is currently up there challenging Red Bull, even if their strategy decisions are laughable and arguably cost them the 1-2 that they were gunning for in Singapore? I don't see how we can. They did what they thought was best, and it didn't work out. On we move to the next one. It is, however, disappointing that they keep doing this week in and week out. You'd think by now, after 2 seasons of the same questionable strategy decisions, possibly even longer, that they would have learnt. Maybe even with a change at the helm in Fred, that they would have learnt, but they haven't. Anywho, enough ranting about Ferrari. Singapore was a roller coaster of emotions for Mercedes, and particularly George Russell. The team showed strong performances across the weekend, and George ultimately put his car on the front row. Hamilton, 3 places behind in 5th. So overall, not a bad weekend. Is it where they used to be? No. They like to be at the top. But with their current performance, they'll take what they can get. The start of the race for them was absolute chaos, right? George conceded 2nd place to Charles, who was on the soft tyres.
Nice.
And Lewis ran wide in turn 1, gained 2 positions, and then had to concede them to George and Lando, or risk being handed a penalty by the FIA. But apart from that, their races were largely uneventful. Until the last laps of the race. Thanks to a safety car, they got to pit, put on fresh mediums, and away they went. And for the first time all season, Mercedes were really, truly in contention for a win. Not a Red Bull in sight that was going to get in their way. And possibly even on for a double podium, if they could have gotten around Lando. And then Carlos. But we'll come back to that. It was just one slight clip of the wall in turn 10 that brought them back to reality.
No! God, please, no! No!
With the dreadful consequence for George and his car that they ended up in the wall on the very last lap of the Grand Prix. And to add salt to the already nasty wound, at the time of this crash, George was sitting pretty much directly on the directly on the rear wing of Lando in 2nd. He was getting so close to an overtake, thanks to Carlos's strategic decision to keep Lando within DRS range. Lando was able to keep him at bay. But thanks to hitting the wall, George went from 3rd and a podium to 16th in a matter of minutes, but allowed Lewis to snatch the final podium. So overall, they still got their podium, but we saw a very, very emotional George in the paddock afterwards. Understandable, given that it was a very tough race, a very physical race. To have it end that way has got to be brutal mentally. So hopefully he can put that behind him and move into Japan with a clean slate. The roller coaster of emotions did not end there. It continued over in the Alpine garage, where there was a not so happy birthday for Esty Bestie, who DNF'd on his birthday with a suspected gearbox issue midway through the race. At that time, he was on for a P6 finish. And a nice little bunch of championship points for a birthday present. However, given that his gearbox failed him and he ran out of power, that didn't happen. Pierre Gasly, his teammate, however, managed to claw back some points for the team and took that 6th position for himself. This again brings into question the reliability of Alpine and their overall R&D program, given that they have by far had the most mechanical DNFs this season for both cars than any other team. And there's been a significant overall lack of substantial upgrade in comparison to their nearest rival. McLaren last weekend brought an array of upgrades on Lando's car. And this week Oscar's got, and Lando's got 2 more. So Alpine, I'm not quite sure what's going on, but I think their season is, I don't see them catching McLaren. Let's put it that way. Has it got something to do with their double DNF in Australia, which I addressed earlier this season? But has that had such an impact on their overall budget and the repair job that they have just not been able to claw back or make the progress that they were hoping to? I mean, sacking your team principal halfway through the season is also going to have an impact, but not so much on that side. But we'll leave R&D and team principal drama for the moment. My personal highlight of the weekend was getting to meet Lando and Oscar on multiple occasions. They were just so absolutely sweet and so kind. Even when they were running late or rushing, they still had time to stop and sign shirts and hats and posters and take selfies and have a quick chat. And it was just the most wholesome interaction I could ever have imagined. And yes, I cried a lot and I hyperventilated for 2 hours But that's a whole other thing in itself. But onto Suzuka we go for more racing action and probably a little bit of drama too.